Welcome to the Backlash. I am your host, Rebecca Hargraves. I don't know why I messed that up.
Oh, wow. We're off to a strong start today.
My name is Rebecca Hargraves. I know it well. It's my own name. Great start. I am joined, as always, by Mr. Dave Reilly. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good.
You have a good weekend?
Yeah, it's incredibly hot.
Yeah, it's been
just
great.
Painfully hot. I kind of can't wait for winter.
Yeah, it'll get that way.
It will.
You do anything fun?
No.
Why not? What's wrong with you? We have the fair in town. We had the fair in town.
I went to the fair, and it was a disconcerting experience.
Why?
Because I'm always worried that the fair represents the general population. And then I go there and I'm like, oh, we are so screwed. We are so screwed. It was fun, though. You can find us on X at Real Backlash, our website, thebacklash.net. Support us on subscribestar.com/thebacklash, patreon.com/thebacklash. Send your super chats that will be read live. Questions for our guest at thebacklash.net/superchat, or our YouTube channel, which is somehow taking super chats now, and that is at Real Backlash. Sub to us on Rumble as well, and that's Backlash Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to our sponsors, Atlas Bullion, your favorite supplier of gold, silver, and others. North Idaho Tallow, that is skin products with no endocrine disruptors, and of course, Antelope Hill, the place that will publish
literally anything.
They're not going to like this. Let's introduce our guest.
Am I doing that, or are you doing that?
I'll do that.
Oh, okay.
Pastor Joel Webbon is the president and founder of Right Response Ministries and the senior pastor of Covenant Bible Church, located on the north side of Austin, Texas. He's the husband of Megan, the father of 5 beautiful children. His content is excellent. Please check him out. Welcome, Joel.
Thanks for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on. You can definitely make sure you follow him, by the way, on X at Right Response M. And
M as in Ministries.
Yes.
At Right Response M. Thanks, guys.
And his website, rightresponseministries.com. Figure we'd get that up front, and then we'll plug it again at the end.
Sure. Just to start, could you share a little bit about how your journey in ministry led you to found Right Response Ministries and Covenant Bible Church?
Yeah, sure. I've been building the plane in mid-flight. I've been learning as I go. I've never claimed to, have started the right way with all my ducks in a row. I did not know what I know now, and I'm still very much a work in progress, being sanctified day by the power of the Holy Spirit, with plenty more sin that God continues to convict me of, and plenty more opportunity to repent and trust in Jesus. So I was raised in a pastor's home. I was adopted as a baby. And whatever was broke with my mom got fixed. My adoptive mom, she couldn't conceive, but lots of stories like this. After I was adopted, God opened the womb, and they had multiple biological children. And so I was adopted and raised in a pastor's home, raised in more of a charismatic movement, non-denominational, but Pentecostal light, probably like a Pentecostal light. And then as I became a young adult, started really learning more theology from the scripture myself, eventually became Reformed, embraced the Reformed tradition on the Protestant side of the aisle in terms of my theology, my soteriology, what I believe about salvation. In terms of doctrine of God, I would have a lot, almost entirely the same view as most Roman Catholics. I think Roman Catholics are fantastic on theology proper, classical theism and understanding the nature of God, the 3 persons of God, all those things. And so anyways, grew in my theology, set out at a very young age in my early 20s to try to plant a church, because Protestants are allowed to do whatever we want, which is not great. There are absolutely weaknesses with that, but set out to plant a church when planting churches within the Protestant Christian, realm was all the rage. And so it's like, hey, here's a young guy, and he's going to be fresh, and he's going to be relevant, and he's going to, be charismatic in terms of, his personality and those kinds of things. And so I set off to plant a church and led a glorified Bible study on Sunday evenings for a number of years in San Diego, California. Continued to make mistakes, was not qualified to plant a church at the time. By God's grace, eventually I began to grow and began to grow in character and also in doctrine. And then eventually we established more of an institutional church that had leaders, elders, and deacons, and then also a formal, meaningful church membership. That church in San Diego is still doing very well. They've started a school now. They own a building. We started with nothing. And I handed the church over and left to plant a new church in Texas in 2020. It was right after having our third child, and just looking at California, especially in 2020, I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to have children there. I didn't want to raise a family there. The politics, the economics, the culture, all those things. And then I also did have disagreements with my elders. We disagreed sharply over COVID. That was unfortunate. They eventually came around like everybody else. Everybody came around, but virtually no one has gone back and said, oh, by the way, I was wrong. Right? Nobody's apologized, of course. Nobody's apologized. Everybody pretends as though, oh, I always saw it. No, you didn't.
Right. I saw a tweet the other day that said, who you were during COVID is who you are. And I was like, that's absolutely right. I'm happy to hear. I wish some people would go back and be like, this was a huge mistake, especially in the ministry.
Well, and it's unfortunate because I was at the time, because my elders disagreed, when we finally started, when we were doing church, we missed 4 weeks, and we didn't want to. I certainly didn't want to, but we were meeting in a school at the time, a public school. We were kicked out. We had nowhere to meet. Eventually, another church allowed us. They weren't even using, their building, and we, they didn't let us use their building either, but they let us, at least congregate outside. So we started doing outdoor services at the end of April. Which I think was still a massive failure, but compared to most churches, that put us like 8 months ahead of the curve. The fact that we missed a month, instead of a year of church. So we started gathering outside, but again, there was disagreements with my elders, and so we're outdoors doing, still, the myself and others are wearing a mask, even though we're outside, and I hated it at the time, and of course, my detractors have found pictures of that first service gathered outside with a mask. It's in April of 2020, very early on. It was not my decision. I was outvoted at the time. And of course, they use that to say, look, he failed on COVID too. And I'm like, what? So it's frustrating. But anyways, that was shaping, formative for me, radicalized me, along with many, many, many others in America and around the world. And so that was kind of it. So it was like, all right, I'm getting out of California. My family, I was born and raised in Texas. Praise God. I wasn't, I'm not a native Californian. I'm very proud of that. And so for me, it wasn't quitting. It wasn't retreating. It was returning home. It was God providentially making me aware that my dream to go and plant a church prematurely in California and try to lead surfers to Jesus was actually pretty stupid. And so it was, God using providence to say, hey, wake up, man, go back home. So I went back home to Texas. My wife is native Californian, but even her own family, 8 years prior, before we moved back, 7 years back in 2013, they had moved to Texas, even though they were more native to California. They were like, man, we need to get out of Dodge. They saw the writing on the wall early. They were wise. They were right. I remember my father-in-law saying, Joel, you need to move. And me saying, I can't. I love this church, and I did love the church. And I do love the church. But it was time to go. So 2020, we moved to Texas, started a church in my living room because 7 other families moved with us. So it's like, like the Oregon Trail, with our bandwagons, our minivans, moving to Texas, 7 different families, including my own, and started church in April of 2021 in my living room, and very quickly went from about 20 people, including kids, to about 200 people. And during that time, I started, doing a podcast because I felt like the Lord leading me to never do less than being a churchman and caring for, individual souls at a local level. But I wanted, if God would give me the grace and the capacity to do so, I wanted to do more. So not less, but more. And the Lord has just blessed that. And so Right Response Ministries started, around that timeline, a little bit before we moved, when I was still in California, kind of heading towards that, and then ramped up in 2021, 2022. And now it is, it is what it is. It's not massive. We have like 100, maybe 125,000 or so subscribers on YouTube. X, I didn't even start X until Elon took over because I didn't see the value in it. And but when he took over, so now it's been, 3 years or something like that. And we're about 46,000 on
Nice.
X. But the thing is, like, the reason people recognize me is I have a knack for pissing people off. And so the clips go viral.
Yeah.
You've been doing a great job too. I mean, it's you've been really kind of carving out a spot for Protestantism, because we're both Catholic.
Right.
One of the other, is he a Quaker? I guess he's a WASP.
He's Anglican, yeah.
Anglican, something like that. But I mean, I think I started following you guys when you started your Twitter account, and it was definitely, it got my attention, at least. I was like, oh, wait a minute. It was right as I was kind of getting disillusioned with this idea of working with Protestants on this Christian nationalism thing. Because I was very involved in politics here in Idaho, ran for governor, ran for school board, got condemned by the local church as an anti-Semite, and, they've been ankle biting me ever since. And I really kind of, I don't know how to put it, but I mean, just kind of gave up on this idea of Catholics and Protestants being able to work together to save America. But your stuff has kind of given me a little bit of hope that maybe there is a way that we can do something.
And that way is Christian
everybody.
nationalism.
Right.
That is the future. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
And
your 4 pillars. Let me pull up this tweet real quick. This got a lot of play, I guess. Your 4 pillars of Christian nationalism, or I guess of America, or the way to save the American project is that it would be Christian
nationalism,
patriarchal, race realism,
in any nation. I just think America especially needs it. But this would any nation. If they said, hey, these are the 4 pillars, it would serve them well.
Yes. No, I completely agree. And you mentioned something earlier that I kind of want to pick at as well. It's 2025. You're a Protestant who thinks Catholics are the biggest enemy. You're a fool. All of Western civilization is invaded by Muslims, captured by Jews, perverted by sodomites, ruled by women. Our civilization is collapsing. Get a clue. I was so real for that. You were
so true, King.
Well, so I mean, you talked about the move from California to Texas, but what about the move theologically speaking? You're a Baptist, I believe.
Yes, I am a Baptist. I affirm the 1689 Second London Baptist Confession of Faith. That said, I'm not stupid. I'm a lot of things. I'm a little stupid, but I recognize that the overarching witness of church history is paedobaptism, even within Protestantism. And I understand as it pertains to nationalism and those kinds of things, that credo baptism is going to be tough. That's going to be really tough. It's not a coincidence that even when you think of European countries like England, for example, like England has had Catholic periods, but it's also, had Protestant periods, and both have been able to succeed, at least, temporarily, with a national framework. But even when it was Protestant, it was Anglican, and I don't think that's a coincidence. So I recognize some of the deficiencies with the Baptist position, but the church that I pastor is a Baptist church. Mm-hmm. I've already made so many theological changes over the years. I just want to be slow. I want to be careful. I want to be wise. I don't want to, one of the things that I have to hold in tension that other guys, podcasters don't, is that I am a local guy. So it's not just, me holed up in a studio. Like, you can actually find me. Right. You can find me on the Lord's Day, at 10 a.m. in a pulpit preaching to, flesh and blood people. And so because of that, my calculus is a little bit different, right? I want to be faithful. I want to repent where I'm wrong. I want to make the changes that are necessary. And yet at the same time, I don't want to make so many changes that I arrive at, this, mountain peak of perfect theology, if that were even possible, but it's me and my wife and my 5 kids and nobody else. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think of the second Pilgrim's Progress, John Bunyan, he was a Baptist, and everybody's familiar with the first Pilgrim's Progress, but he actually wrote a second volume, and the second one is less of the individual, Christian pilgrimage, and it's the corporate Christian pilgrimage. So it's now his wife Christiana and their 4 sons, and then their company grows over time. Mr. Greatheart, and then there's all these weaker Christians who join the company that would never make it to the celestial city on their own. Feeble-minded, right? John Bunyan's pretty on the nose when naming his characters. So there's feeble-minded, there's ready to halt, there's all these guys who suck. There's one guy called Little Faith, and there's a point in the book where it's like, is Little Faith going to even make it? Like, I mean, he's Little Faith after all. Like, look at his name, and one of the other characters corrects him and says, wait a second. His name is not No Faith. His name is Little Faith. And even faith of a mustard seed can move mountains. Like he's going to make it. But he makes it in community, right? So like Mr. Greatheart is like this, Christian giant. He's a warrior. He's incredible. And he's like slaying giants, and fighting Apollyon and all these kinds of things. But they make it to the celestial city. And you look at it and you think, if it was just Mr. Greatheart traveling alone, he could have made it in a fortnight. But he willingly slowed down because he was helping others along the path. And I think pastoral ministry at a local level, it's a different calculus. And I'll admit, it has been difficult to hold that tension of going viral on the internet, with right response, but then also having that local pastor mindset and strategy, with a flesh and blood church. And so anyways, all that being said, long response on this. A long response because I know that Baptists suck. So like what you're seeing here is a guilty conscience. But I'm saying all that to say yes. I am Baptist. I pastor a Reformed Baptist church. But many, even in the church, not just myself, we have many that are more of the Presbyterian persuasion, and even those that are convicted Baptists. They understand that. Even if not indefinitely, I think everybody has a sense that there are periods of throughout this gospel age. There are periods of time where I think there's certain principles and virtues that are timeless, that are immutable. But there are periods of time where the church's tactics, you have to embrace some level of flexibility. So I think that like a lot of the divisions over secondary and tertiary doctrinal issues, if we're honest, division is a luxury of victory. You have to win first, right? So when Christendom is reigning, like John Bunyan, again to use him, when Christendom is walking in her, her glass slippers and well adorned, and everybody is on the sidelines clapping and applauding and praising her, right? When Christendom is when Christendom is hot, when you have a Christian nation, then that's when you can afford to have, Main Street and, downtown in every single town in the country, and there's 50 different churches. There's, First Baptist Church and Second and 14 and 47 and the Methodist Church and the, like 4 or 5 different, Presbyterian churches. And there's a Catholic Church, there's an Episcopal Church, there's, all the like, and what that really symbolizes is that's proof positive that at one point we were a Christian nation. And how's that proof? It's proof because it's only when Christendom is so dominant and so permeated an entire society that you can afford to have an individual separate local church for every single, theological nuance. And so for me, I'm like, dude, right now, I'm post-millennial. So I'm actually bullish on not just Christ winning in the bottom of the ninth after the church gets its butt whooped, but I actually think that Christ, head of the church, is going to win through his body, the church, on earth, progressively, gradually in this temporal age, that the church is going to be victorious, like a little bit of leaven working through the whole batch of dough, like a mustard seed growing into an all-earth encompassing tree. That said, just like the stock market, right? You can be bullish and say, well, the stock market always goes up, if you pan out far enough, looking at 20 years, 30 years, 100 years. But there can be some significant dips along the way. And I think it's the same with Christendom. I think it's the same even if you're post-millennial and more positive in your eschatology. And so for me, I feel like we're in a dip. I think we're in a hell of a dip. Not just, the last 4 years. No, like I think like a 250, 300-year dip. Really, really significant. So my point is, in that moment, I don't think it's necessarily ideal as a timeless principle, right? You have to be timely. The sons of Issachar knew the times and they knew what Israel should do, right? So there's something for that, timely versus timeless. So in a timeless sense, in all ages and all places and all times. I wouldn't say like, hey, you should have Paedo Baptist and Credo Baptist in the same local church, context. But in a time where you're in a post-Christian society, you're being invaded by Muslims, you're run by Jews, women are in charge of everything. And in a moment like that, when you're murdering babies by the millions, then I would say, oh, you know what? This might be one of those moments where we need to practice the term that I would use is baptismal Catholicity, lowercase c Catholicity. And so that's kind of what our church is looking at and moving towards, is like, how can we accommodate, guys on both sides of the aisle, Paedo Baptist, Credo Baptist. So yes, we are on paper a Baptist church. And yes, I do personally affirm the 1689 Confession of Faith, but I'm not autistic, if that makes sense about it.
Right. A lot of our audience, and I'm seeing these comments in the live chat right now, but we have a lot of agnostic, atheistic,
pagans.
But race first white people that
Right.
I think are absolutely integral to the movement, to furthering the dissident right. And like you talked about with the mustard seed, what is the place and how do we unify with people on this front? Because what you said about Christianity, even though I'm Catholic, kind of Catholic in name only right now.
You need to go to Mass.
I do need to go to Mass. I do believe what you said about Christendom, but more as it relates to race. Like, I believe if we're a homogenous white country, that we can deal with these divisions later. Let's get there. So how do you square that circle? How do you deal with the issue of race when Christianity is so overwhelmingly welcoming?
Well, as a Christian pastor, let me give you the incredible gift of losing half of your audience. Is that okay?
Please. We punish our listeners all the time.
Oh.
For the guys who are, ethnic, pagan, ethno-nationalist, but I have no doubt they are very J-pilled. Rejecting Christ is the most Jewish thing you can do.
Based. True.
So, and if you really want to hold with your Thor pagan traditions, the most, common tradition of every pagan, white, ethnic, society over the centuries is converting to Christianity.
Yep.
So get with it. Get with it. But to answer the question, to be fair, I think we have to have categories, right? Evangelicals are terrible at this. And I am, for better or worse. I mean, that would be technically the category that I fall into, although I am quite disgusted with my own camp on pretty much every day of the week and twice on Sunday. But evangelicals really struggle to walk and chew gum at the same time. So we have to think in categories. So when it comes to alliances, when it comes to unity and those kinds of things, how can we partner together? I think the answer is it's not this overly purity spiraling. Right, we've had enough beautiful losers, right, and not just with the neocons and politically speaking, but religiously speaking, Christians by and large, Catholics, and Protestants have been beautiful losers, and I don't think we can afford to keep losing beautifully. Like, look at him; he did a triple aerial, axel as he fell on his own sword and bled out and died. Like, we got to stop doing that. And so, one of the ways I think to avoid that is to be mature enough to know the times, like the sons of Issachar, and what Israel should do, and to be able to think in categories. So I think, you could use different labels, but one set of labels, a framework that I'll use is brothers, friends, co-belligerents. Mm-hmm. Brothers, friends, co-belligerents. So like you guys, you would not be able to be members in my church, and you wouldn't want to, so I'm not picking on you. I think you're great people from what I can tell. And I wouldn't be able to be a member in a Catholic church, right? So it's it's a two-way street.
You could,
and I would do. Both of us could, but some concessions would have to be made that neither of us are willing to make. So my point is so therefore I hate you. Now, see, that's what we have to stop doing. We have to stop being so autistic and so it's idealism.
Yeah,
idealism is not helpful. Not when your back is against the ropes, not when you're losing and you need to win. You can't afford to be ideal. Like, I know that this is super nerdy, but you guys had like Lord of the Rings sounding music, with the intro. So I feel like I'm in good company. Like when you're overwhelmed by orcs at the city gates and they outnumber you 10-1, then men and elves and dwarfs are going to have to fight together. So brothers, friends, and co-belligerents. So I would say in that last category, co-belligerents, we can partner with people, not only just different denominations or different strains of Christianity, EO, Eastern Orthodox, Catholic, Protestant, or within Protestantism, Anglicanism, or Baptist or Presbyterians. You not only can you partner there, but you can even partner outside of Christianity. And people are going to be like, "What? I can't believe it." Okay, look, like for all the hypocrites, the Christians watching, who are idealists. Have you ever voted for a non-Christian who ran as a Republican? I mean, how many people voted for Mitt Romney? Right? Like that's a double L. Like you got to take that L twice. If you're the idealist that I'm talking about, you have to take the L in the sense that he's a Mormon, which is not a different strain within Christendom. Mormonism it's a Christological heresy. It actually, Mormonism believes that that Jesus is the first of created beings. He is not the creator who is forever praised. Like they deny the Trinity, they deny the deity of Christ, and so I mean, at that point, you might as well, in my opinion, vote for an atheist. But my point is this: people still did it, and I'm not even condemning that. Right? If you have like some based, conservative Christian on the block, then yeah, give him your vote. But if it's between, some Mormon and a Muslim, yeah, I'm probably going to vote for the Mormon because at the end of the day, if I moved to Utah, a lot of my neighbors would not be Christian, but they also probably wouldn't steal my car.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so to answer your question, for the, ethno-pagan nationalist who's, I think that European, ancestry matters, but for them, that'd be at the top of the list. And so for them, it's like, that's kind of all that matters. But that guy, even though I have some profound disagreements, he's not going to be in the brother category. He's not necessarily even going to be in the friend category, but he can be a co-belligerent. And so I think we can partner instead of this all or nothing mindset of, can we partner on everything? If not, then we can partner on nothing. I just think that's idealism. That's unhelpful. So then the question would be like, okay, what can we partner on? Okay, we both want to punish theft. We both want to stop immigration. We both so partner where you can partner.
Right. Yeah. No. I mean, I think you've taken a really healthy view of this stuff. I mean, based on the content that I'm seeing from your podcast, from your channel. Your tweets, ultimate identity in Christ does not render the question of an earthly identity or an earthly national identity moot. This is a good example of the Jesus juke. I guess there's been this trend among Christians, basically since I've been alive at least, and I'm sure it goes back to the boomers, where all, especially like the modern Zionist evangelicals, they say that, your race, your heritage, your nationality does not matter whatsoever at all. A black person in, sub-Saharan Africa is exactly identical to a white person in America because we're all one in Christ, right? And then they'll go and support Israel as they bomb little children and stuff like this.
Right.
But, I do think that there is a kind of a healthy balance. We've been seeing this also, from the Catholic side, specifically a guy named American Reform on Twitter, who's done an excellent job going back through Catholic social teaching about the reality of race, about, the national distinctions that happen. And, I think that the pagans kind of get on Christians' butts a little bit in a way that is kind of unfair because Europe was Christian even Catholic for, 1900 years. And we had nations, we had nationalism, we defended our borders, we had the Reconquista, and it's only this kind of post-World War II consensus, liberal new religion, it's only since that has come about that we have really kind of started to commit suicide en masse.
I mean, I don't think that theologically this is even very confusing because it can all be explained by God made different races and then borders and nationality and cultures. So how is this such I think that you can definitely be a race realist and be Christian. I don't think they're at odds at all.
See them. Yeah, I don't see how they're opposed. I mean, and you can even look at these stories like, was it the Tower of Babel, right? And isn't what it is that we're doing today in America basically a modern incarnation of
Right.
Babel, right? We're trying to take all of these people together, trying to, build our AI super god computer thing that will make all the decisions for us. It's striking when you see it put that way. Thoughts?
Part of the problem, real quick, with the Tower of Babel is just terrible exegesis, which is really, it's a modern way of interpreting the scripture. It's gay race communism, eisegeted onto the text rather than exegeted, read out of the text. But with Babel, for instance, people look at that and they'll say, well, look, this is a judgment, right? So like God comes and he scrambles up their languages so that the people ultimately abandon their project, and they divide and go to different places within the earth and become distinct peoples. And people say, well, look, this is God's judgment for their pride. And it is, there is a sin of pride, but there's really, at least, you could flesh it out even more, but two primary sins, not just one, but two. One is they said, that let's build a tower that, that extends to the heavens and make a name for ourselves, right? So one is they're wanting to exalt themselves to the same level, if not above God. They're wanting to attain to deity. It's the same as, the woman in the garden, in Genesis chapter 3, that, if you eat of this fruit, then you will be as God, right? You'll know as God knows. And so she wants to attain omniscience. She wants to attain, godlike status and wisdom. And so it's that sin, the sin of pride and arrogance and wanting to exalt himself to the status of God. But the second thing that I think people look over is they also say, let us build a tower that stretches to the heavens, that we might build a name for ourselves so that we will not be scattered over the face of the earth. And I think what people will miss is that, the dominion mandate in Genesis chapter 2, before sin enters the world, in a prelapsarian world, God gave the commandment, this dominion mandate, that man should be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. And so it was always God's design, even pre-sin, and the dominion mandate carries over after sin. It's still the cultural mandate given to mankind before sin, after sin. It hasn't changed. And that mandate is to be fruitful and to multiply, but also to fill the earth. And so, if you think of it like this, and this requires a little bit of like philosophical, it's not strictly exegesis, but philosophical theology. What do you think would have happened if Adam had never sinned? Well, I think what would have happened if they're obeying the command of God, they're not eating of the fruit, but they're also obeying this, this dominion mandate. They would have been fruitful, they would have multiplied, they would have spread out and filled the earth. And over time, naturally, providentially, people would have been in different places. Some people would have been, in islands and seafaring people. Some people would have settled in mountainous regions. Some people would have settled in plains, and been more agricultural. Some people would have been hunters, and some people would have done this and done that. And over time, without God scrambling their languages, I think, unique dialects would have formed, right? People would have spread out, and maybe there's, a pilgrimage that happens, once a decade or even once a century, as time expands and goes on, where, once every 100 years, everybody goes back to pay homage to Adam and Eve, your great-great-great-great-grandparents, because sin never entered the world. And the Bible teaches that, through sin, death. So there wouldn't have been death. So Adam and Eve would still be alive. And so, maybe once every 100 years you go back and you visit them. But again, over time, I think dialects would have formed. Dialects would have become languages. There would have been different strengths and weaknesses among different people and different skills and different knowledges and all these. You eventually would have had distinct peoples. The way that I see Babel, in other words, is that there are two sins. One is arrogance, exalting yourself to the status of God. But the second is actually wanting to rebel against the dominion mandate. God said, be fruitful, multiply, go and fill the earth. And they're saying, let us build this tower to the heavens to make a name for ourselves so that we will not have to obey God. We will not be scattered over the face of the earth. They're wanting to congregate when God explicitly commanded in the garden that they should not congregate, but rather fill the whole earth, that they should spread out. And so what God does in Babel, it is a judgment, but it's a judgment containing mercy, as many of God's judgments are. So it is a judgment on its face, a judgment for their sin of pride. He disrupts and destroys their arrogant, project of trying to ascend to godlike status with this tower. But he also, in his mercy, simultaneously judgment, but also mercy, in his mercy, he's actually using this supernatural event of scrambling their languages to, as a catalyst, to simply accomplish what I believe would have been accomplished otherwise and should have been. It was actually the goal to be accomplished otherwise, but to do it quickly instead of providentially over time. So I think that Babel, what we miss with Babel is that God is actually yes, he's judging the sin of pride, but he also, it is a judgment coated with mercy. He's also getting mankind, his image-bearing creatures, back on the original track faster, knowing that because they're disobedient, rebellious, they're not going to do it through obedience. And so I'm going to supernaturally do it with this cataclysmic event. And so that being said, if you don't view Babel in that way, then you'll be reading, the story of, Genesis chapter 11 with Babel, and you'll be thinking, these are the good guys, or, to steel man it, you'll be thinking, well, the only thing they did bad was their pride. But if you could, congregate and stay together and have a, globalistic one world, government and everybody speaks the same language, if you could do that, without the hubris, without the arrogance, then that would be really good. But you have to see it again as two failures, two sins, not just one. Pride, but also not wanting to spread out and be distinct peoples, which I do believe was the intended goal. And so God's judgment was a judgment towards pride, but also a mercy towards getting us back on track with a catalyst, speeding it up with the original dominion mandate. So different nations are good, and different peoples are good. And because, I'm a Christian and I love the Bible, I look at Revelation, I look at the end goal, and it's like, before the Lamb, we're all going to be worshiping God together in unity, and we're going to see every tribe, tongue, and nation represented. And I like that. Diversity in heaven is great. You know why? Because
low crime rate.
Because there's no more sin. So it's okay. I don't have to worry about diversity. Stealing my car. So one, there's no more sin. But here's the irony: you don't have diversity in the end if you don't maintain diversity now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? You don't get every tribe, tongue, and nation. If Jesus tarries, we don't know when he'll return. It could be tomorrow, but it could be 1,000 years. I tend to think it's going to be a while. It's been 2,000 years already. Everybody who said, Jesus is coming back next Thursday has been wrong again and again and again. It could easily be another 1,000 years, 2,000 years, 5,000 years. So if the Father chooses for Christ to tarry in his final physical return and the final resurrection of the dead and the culmination of human history and all these things, and we don't beat back against gay race communism, then you actually don't get diversity in heaven. Yeah. You're not going to have every tribe, tongue, and language. It's just going to be this soup,
Now, speaking of pride and hubris, which we were just talking about.
We haven't talked about Jews enough.
Well, they have their own word for it. It's chutzpah. Chutzpah. You got to get that in there.
Chutzpah.
Recently, I don't know if you've seen this video. You probably have. Speaking of pride, Mike Huckabee, our ambassador to Israel, was recently, I guess, meeting with some sect of Orthodox Jews talking about anti-Semitism. And we've got the clip. We're going to play the clip. We're going to talk about the clip. This is unbelievable. Let's see.
The ambassador has a very interesting view of anti-Semitism. Rosh Hashiva grew up in America. There was anti-Semitism, of course. What I've experienced, we've all experienced it. The ambassador has a very interesting view of that. He says you can't understand anti-Semitism. If people who are anti-Semitic, it's because they're against God, they're against the Rabbi Shalom. And we are represented as his people, and that's why they're anti-Semitic. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. Interesting view.
It's an interesting view. There's another view that since we consider the chosen people, so people are very. Who are you? What are you? Where are you taking big shots? Chosen people.
And that's part of it. Is that because you are the chosen people, given a chosen place, for a chosen purpose. And if someone is angry at God, he'll be angry at the people who represent him.
That's right.
So I tell people anti-Semitism is irrational. There's no reason for it unless you understand the spiritual reason, which is what I believe is at the heart of it. It is not the left versus the right. It is good versus evil. It is the Creator versus those who rebel against the Creator.
Well, the irony of that is that I agree with him. in that this is a spiritual battle, and we should be opposing those who are in rebellion against the Creator. But that is Jews. Those are he's describing Jews.
Well, here, and just to kind of follow that up, I don't know why this is not loading for me right now. Maybe it's like we'll get banned from YouTube if we.
Our
play
internet
it.
is also in rebellion.
Yeah, Starlink. Hello, Elon. But earlier today, video has emerged, and I don't get this. Why aren't you playing? Please play for me. Oh, well. Anyway, the point is, Israel, the modern state of Israel, bombed a medical complex, the Nasser Medical Complex in southern Gaza. And as rescue crews arrived to start evacuating and helping the injured people,
they did it again.
Israel did the double tap. They bombed again, basically murdering everybody in the frame on live television. And then you've got Mike Huckabee coming out saying, "Oh, well, it's just completely irrational." Well, no, it's not irrational. We have some issues here with our money and our state backing essentially a genocide of people in the Middle East. It's been going on since 1948. But at the same time, you've got a supposed Christian, Mike Huckabee, who's talking about how the Jews are God's chosen people, God's representatives. And these are the people that clamored to have Jesus Christ nailed on a cross, right? These are the people that shouted, "Give us Barabbas, give us revolution," against the Romans that killed the Logos incarnate. So what is your take on this? And have you always had the views on Israel and Zionism that you currently hold now? Is this a recent development that's kind of happened since October 7th? Can you talk us through a little bit of that?
Yeah, I came into these views probably in the last 2 years, before October 7th, but no, not from the cradle. I was born and raised in America. Right? So I think, most people in America have been Zionist by default. And so I think pretty much everybody who holds, a similar position to the position I hold or you guys hold, is, someone who came into that position. They were evangelized, ironically, by Jews. The most convincing argument for anti-Semitism is Israel.
Jewish behavior.
Jewish behavior.
Yeah. And so, no, it's a more recent development for myself, but it was, before October 7th, I had done already a 9-part, long form series, just focusing on the theological side of the equation and less of the geopolitics and even less of, the historical things. Like we didn't get into, why are there ridges, on the edges of coins? we didn't get into, some of those things, which are fascinating and like hilarious and sad at the same time. But just dealing with scripture, each episode we focused on the book of Hebrews. We focused on, it was me and another individual, a friend of mine. We focused on Galatians, focused on Romans. Romans chapter 11 is one of the kind of quintessential texts that, that Zionists would use to say, well, yeah, okay, maybe, that's kind of like the free safety. You get past every other, Zionist argument, and they say, yeah, okay, yeah, so I guess, Judaism rejects Christ and hates Christ, and they've done some, some terrible things throughout history, and blah, 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 but, they're God's chosen people, and even if there's not, a physical, land promise for them and these kinds of things in the future, there's still this, futuristic spiritual revival, and all the other nations of the world, all Christians are dependent on that, right? That we need, God to convert Jews. And when that happens, their conversion, the natural branch is being grafted back into this, this olive tree, that will mean this life from the dead. It'll be the kickstart of this global revival where all the other nations, the Gentiles will start flooding in. And so if you care about, your country, if you care about Brazil, if you care about, El Salvador, you care about China, you care about Russia, you care about, if you care about the rest of the world, then you got to be rooting for the conversion, this, at least spiritually speaking, a spiritual conversion in our future of the Jewish people. Otherwise, you're not going to get it. So we dealt with that, and dismantled that because I don't believe that. I think that's not what Romans 11 is actually talking about, at least not as it applies today. And so we did all this kind of stuff. So my views predate October 7th, and the theological framing. And but yeah, it came later in life. I like everybody else, I didn't think a whole lot about Israel one way or the other, but I just by default accepted that they must be God's chosen people and those kinds of things.
Yeah, I think, with us, it's a similar kind of thing. I mean, like I noticed some things, like when I was in the music industry, I remember, I've told the story before, I think, but I was sitting at a recording studio in Manhattan, and I'm 2:00 in the morning, and everyone's kind of talking about how their grandparents fled to Brooklyn after the Bolshevik Revolution. And I'm like, wait a minute, am I the only non-Jewish guy here?
Yes.
And they're like, you aren't Jewish? I'm like, yeah, my last name's Reilly. What do you think I am? I'm Irish Catholic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And then you never worked again.
And I never worked again. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what happened. But, I didn't really think about it until, I had my radio show back in 2017, and there was a boycott of it, a boycott of the whole radio station. And when you boil it down, the three main driving factors were three Jewish people that took issue with the fact that our morning co-host would make fun of Christianity and Mary, and then we would make fun of his little hat or whatever, right? And so he was allowed to make fun of Christianity, but then we weren't allowed to make fun of Jews.
Yeah.
And
That's how it goes.
And so when there was an opening, these three key players in town used their power to pour gas on the fire, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, we got a problem over here, And then of course, over the past 8 years, seeing the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, putting all the pieces together, and even more recently, actually, the reason why we even have this show is because a local Protestant Zionist minister started calling around to some of my friends, asking questions about my relationship with Rebecca, with Vincent James, R.I.P. He used to be on the podcast. He's retired now. But, basically trying to make lists of people who were not unconditionally supportive of Israel. And, I had tried to work with these people. I've had several phone calls. We're going to play a clip, actually, of one of these phone calls. But it has become increasingly clear that those of us who are aware of the evil of Zionism, the modern state of Israel, the funding, the focus, it's like idol worship. So I want to play a clip of a supposed Christian pastor. And the question is, I guess, what would you say to someone like this who claims to be pro-life, who claims to be Christian, and then will go on to say something like this?
And I saw with my eyes what is actually going on over there, not what we're reading about or hearing about in the media.
Right.
And I think, and this for the record, I know that we may disagree here. And David, please, you and I can disagree about a lot of things agreeably, I think. When I see what Israel is doing, I think they have every reason to do it. And I would do more. If it were me, I would do more. Because I would be telling them, give us back our hostages or you're dead. And they keep saying, you're attacking our babies. Then give us back our hostages and we'll stop. I know that's rough language, but they have Americans.
They have Americans.
Give us back our hostages and we'll stop bombing you. Otherwise, I think Israel is absolutely holding themselves back. Because I'd probably blow the whole damn thing off the map and say, well, there's not going to be such a thing as the West Bank if you don't give us back our hostages. But I know that's crazy talk.
So, I mean, I was shocked when he said that to me.
Were you?
I mean, I didn't say anything because I didn't know what to say, frankly.
It's quite the admission.
Yeah, quite the, and again, this is, look at well, I can't play the clip, but I mean, here they are. They're like bombing a place, injuring people, and then bombing all of the aid workers. They're, depriving them of food, water, and fuel. And then when they go to actually distribute the stuff, they start opening fire and shooting children in the back, right? How is this Christian? How did this happen? Do you do battle against a person like this, or do you ignore them? Like, what would your response be?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the tide is turning significantly. I mean, positive view towards Israel is probably at an all-time low. The lowest it's been in my lifetime. And so again, like I said earlier, we all agreed that one of the most powerful arguments for anti-Semitism is Jewish behavior. And so I think as Israel continues to behave the way that it is currently, it's kind of like the left, the Biden administration, those kinds of things. Like that's part of the reason why Trump, won with as much of, a margin as he did. Was like, one of the best arguments for Trump was Biden. Like let the left, have a little bit of a leash, and then this sentiment from many people is never again. It's funny, like all the James Lindsay's of the world and stuff, like never again is now, and I would agree, but just with the Anakin meme face, like never again is now. You're right, but not the way you think. I really do think that people are changing their minds, and it's picking up more and more momentum by the day. It's inhumane, it's cruel. You're talking about genocide. You're talking about war crimes. You're talking about things that are universally despised by most people. And I think one of the best things that you can do is you can make arguments and you can respond and all those kinds of things. But one of the best things you can do is just continue to publicize it. Like that's the difference is media, right? We didn't have the technology that we have today. And, and even when we did, there were gatekeepers, and the gatekeepers still try, but everybody's breaching containment. They're not able to, to hold the line as they once did. You're not able to suppress speech like you once were. And so I think, with more and more freedom of speech, with more and more independent people in media and, in technology and people, just showcasing who Israel is and the things that they're doing, the whole world is turning against them. And I think they know. And I think it's weird because on the one hand, it's like, man, if you were Netanyahu, you'd be thinking, well, we'd better back off because we're getting some pretty bad press. But on the other hand, I think they realize that, the boomers are going to be gone. Well, I don't know. We say that, but I have a sneaking suspicion they might build a base on the moon and harvest.
I know, right?
And and find a way to live forever. So I don't know. Like people have been saying the boomers can be gone, and I'm not convinced. I feel like somehow they're gonna find the fountain of youth or partner with Peter Thiel, and just upload their consciousness, transhumanism or whatever. Like they'll find a way to make sure that Gen X and millennials are forgotten, in all of eternity. But assuming that the boomers actually do die, Israel's toast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Who's gonna support them?
Gravy train is coming to a screeching halt. So my point is, I think Israel, on the one hand, they're like, dude, like, we're getting terrible press. On the other hand, I think they know their days are numbered. They actually have a very short window before all of a sudden, like it's going to be a lot of millennials in charge. It's going to be a lot of groypers in charge. It's going to be, and I think they know, oh snap. Like if we're going to do something, we've got to do it now.
Yeah. Yeah, that brings us, I've got like the two last kind of follow-up questions were, Nick Fuentes, you've been very outspoken in your support of him. We've had a couple of priests on our show that are very supportive, Father James Maudsley. I think that this kid is, I don't know, man. Like there are moments where I think like this kid was like anointed for this period of time.
Yeah.
To be doing what he's doing, saying what he's saying. There's times when he's like, giving a political speech, all of a sudden it's like, more intense than any sermon I've ever heard from like a priest. And it's just like, wow. So I guess, have you had any backlash for coming out and supporting this young man and supporting groypers and this whole kind of America First dissident right movement? How have you navigated that?
Yeah, so I'm pretty committed to a radical strategy that upsets a lot of people. My strategy is this: I support everything that I agree with, and I don't support the things that I don't agree with.
Wow.
Right? Like I have that position, I hold that position, not just with Nick, but I know this is, again, radical, but I actually hold that position as a universal one size fits all for everyone in all the world and in all time periods. So I agree, and I'll publicly say it, I agree with everything the Nazis did that I believe, according to the Word of God, was moral and good. And I disagree with everything that the Nazis did or did not do that does not agree with the Word of God. I actually hold that view towards, Stalin. I hold it towards Mussolini. It's a radical position. I know. So all that being said, I have publicly said, because here's the thing, again, it's my theology, it's my faith in Christ and my commitment to God's word as infallible and true, that causes me, to do things that upset people a lot of the time. But one of the biblical principles that I want to submit to and I want to obey is the scripture that says to give honor to whom honor is due. And the easy thing to do, because I see guys doing it with me, so I think I'm maybe just more sympathetic towards a guy like Nick than a lot of other people are. I think a lot of people don't have sympathy because they can't relate. And they can't relate because they've never been right. with you know what I mean? Like they've never been right, and they certainly have never been right early before other people, before, putting their finger in the wind and seeing, so a lot of people they're quick to judge because they're not able to relate at all because they've always been freaking wrong about everything.
That's why Nick is so dangerous.
I don't know how you could be sympathetic towards Nick. Well, I can see why you don't see that because you've never exercised courage in your life. You've never been right in a prophetic sense ahead of time in your life. Now, for me, and it's the grace of God. It's not to boast in Joel, but by the grace of God, I actually know what that feels like. I know what it's like to be a minority and to be persecuted and hated and told to shut up and slandered and mocked because, not because you were wrong, but because you were early. Like I told Nick this, talked to him on the phone and I told him, just trying to as a pastor, right? I'm a pastor. He's a person made in the image of God with an eternal soul. And so I was trying to encourage him. And I said, Nick, one of the best things that you have going for you is that you're young, right? He's 27 years old. If he's not assassinated, which we should pray that the Lord protects him.
Amen.
But if he's not assassinated, Lord willing, he has 50 years, 40 years easily of public life. And I said, one of the best things that you have going for is you actually have enough time for the tide to turn and to actually be appreciated before you're dead. Most guys with courage are appreciated. They are. Once they've been safely buried under 6 feet of dirt. See the way that cowards work, and that is the vast majority of humanity. Let's just be honest. 95% of people are cowards, right? Like this idea, everybody's a leader. No, they're not. Of course they're not. Most people are NPCs. Most people are followers. Most people are cowards. They don't have the grit. They don't have the spine. They don't have the virtue to actually lead. They don't have courage. And so most people, therefore, are actually afraid of courage. Courage is repulsive to them. They're disgusted by courage. They have a natural instinctive aversion towards courage, and they only appreciate courage once it's dead. They only appreciate courage once it's safe to appreciate. And okay, well, you're a pastor. Give me a Bible example of this. Okay, well, what did Jesus say to the Pharisees and the Sadducees and all these religious, Jewish leaders? He said, "You're just like your fathers. Your fathers, they're the ones who killed Jeremiah and Isaiah." Has a prophet ever been put to death outside of Jerusalem? Jerusalem is the city that kills the prophets. It's not unique to me. You guys have a rich, long-standing, centuries-long tradition of hating anyone and everyone who speaks for God. But here's the thing. He said, your fathers killed the prophets, and then you build tombs and memorials to honor them. So yeah, you appreciate Jeremiah after he's dead, but your fathers killed Jeremiah, and you've never had a living prophet that you've ever received. And so too, here I am, Christ speaking, as the capital P prophet, and the proof that you're just like your fathers. You think, oh, well, we wouldn't have killed Jeremiah if he came in our day. Well, it's one who is greater now than Jeremiah is standing in your midst, and you are seeking to kill me. You're not just a chip off the old block in terms of your ancestral human fathers, but you really resemble your true father, John chapter 8, the devil. He was a liar and a murderer from the very beginning, and so are you. You're bearing false witness against me, lying, and you're seeking to kill me. You're trying to murder me. So all that being said, what's my position on Nick Fuentes? The same position I have on every human being in the world. My position is the things that I disagree with, but the things that I do agree with, if he's someone who has been right, someone who's been courageous, someone who has been early, my Bible says to give honor where honor is due. So I'm not just going to quietly agree with him, hijack and copy all of his positions and take the credit for myself like a sleazeball. Instead, I'm going to start saying some of these things, and anything that Nick was one of the first guys to say the thing, I actually want to tip the hat. I want to publicly, despite how it might muddy my own reputation, despite what it costs, I just think it's the right thing to do. So I want to be able to say publicly, you know what? This guy had his life blown to pieces by Ben Shapiro, by all the neocons, by PragerU, by Charlie Kirk, by this guy, that guy. He was a 17-year-old kid. And he started off wanting to be the good guy. And when everybody hates you, when everybody lies about you, when everybody says that you're a bad guy, you know what happens? Unless you are seasoned and sanctified and older and mature, the vast majority of people, when everyone says you're the bad guy, you usually lean in. You're like, well, screw it, and you play the heel. And so I think that there are like people like, so you agree with this clip, and they'll go and find the worst clip from Nick, from 3 years ago or 2 years ago, or in some cases 2 weeks ago, where usually at the end of the show when he's, going off on the super chats, and all that kind of stuff, they'll be like, you agree with this? And my position would be, no, I would not say that. If I would say that, you'd hear me say, I don't say those things. I don't speak that way. I don't hold that position. But here's the bottom line. He was right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he deserves credit. And here's the thing. I actually believe that Nick, I don't think he's a monster. I don't. I think he's a human being. And I actually believe not just that he was right and that we should give him credit. I'm more interested than just giving him credit. I'm actually interested. I want to see Nick, by God's grace, I want to see him reformed. I want to see him mature. I want to see him grow. And I'm not saying that in a patronizing way. Nick is my superior in geopolitics. He's my superior in so many ways. So I don't want to like, oh, hey kid, like, no, like that's arrogant. That's patronizing. I have learned by listening to him, I have learned, multiple things from Nick. He is beyond me. He is my superior in this realm, But as a pastor in some other arenas, like character, I don't want to just give him credit, but I actually want to see him grow. And I think that one of the ways to do it ultimately is the Holy Spirit and his work. But one of the ways to do it is to come alongside a young man like that's just been slandered left and right for years and years and say, hey, you know what? You're angry because people were cruel to you. They lied about you. They slandered you. And still to this day, all the sentiment has turned all of a sudden. And so Matt Walsh, as he's, repeating your talking points, 4 years later, 5 years later, he's going back and tipping the hat and acknowledging, you know what, Nick Fuentes, he was right about a thing or two, right? Wrong. Like, no. So everybody's echoing you in this area. No one's acknowledging you. And in fact, they're still slandering you. Oh, well, he's a pedophile. Oh, well, he's a fed, or he's gay, or. And so I'm thinking, like, one, because I want to honor God, not that my chief goal is not to honor Nick, it's to honor God, give honor where honor is due. And then also because I want to honor God, I'd like to see Nick. It's funny, like I'm tempted to even do a series or something, that like redeeming Nick Fuentes. And what I'd like to, and one of the ways that I think that that's going to happen, like, I mean, you see this throughout history, like whether any great leader, there's this moment where an older man comes alongside and not patronize it, recognizing that this young man is a savant. He's a once in a generation guy. The older man doesn't have the innate giftings that the younger, but he is seasoned. He's older. There's some wisdom there. And what he does is he doesn't just beat him up. He doesn't just humiliate him and correct him, but he comes along and he puts his hand on his shoulder and he says, hey, you were right. You are gifted. I see this in you. there's greatness, aspire towards it. Aspires. And so so I actually think that Nick is growing. There's more growth to happen, but I think he is growing in terms of character. I think he's recognizing things, like some of the clips. I know, like, it's baby steps, granted, but he's like, hey, you know what? We got to stop saying the N-word on the show. It's baby steps, but that's growth. That's something's happening. I think he's cleaning up. I think he's maturing. He's not compromising. He's not moving left in terms of his positions, but in terms of his presentation, he's realizing, like, okay, maybe I don't want to just do a show, forever. Like, what if one day I actually want to run for office or something? Like, I do need to grow up. I do need to mature. And I think one of the big things that's going to help him along the way in that journey is some guys actually, instead of attacking him all the time, coming alongside and pointing out the good and affirming it. That's what father figure, like, as an adopted kid, like, I'm only, and I've made tons of mistakes, but I would have been so much worse. I would have been a total degenerate if it hadn't been for my parents adopting me, Christian parents. And the best thing that my dad, my adoptive father, did for me was not just correcting me when I was wrong. I needed that also. We need correction. But he didn't just correct me. He affirmed me. He wasn't ashamed of me.
Yeah.
He wasn't embarrassed of me, even when I screwed up. My dad was a pastor, and there were times as a kid where you're a PK, you're the pastor's kid, and I'm running around as a little kid in the sanctuary, knocking over chairs, and probably, he never, I never saw my dad embarrassed of me.
Yeah.
And if he corrected me, he did it privately. And he stood up for me. And he affirmed the good in me. And if you've been in media for 10 years and no one's ever given you credit, no one's ever affirmed you, and everyone's called you a monster, then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You become that.
And it has
so I'm not
been
gonna
wonderful to watch Nick's evolution, especially the last few months, because I think he is getting that affirmation.
Yeah.
And it's helping him grow. So I'm happy to see it.
I was also going to say, it's kind of a new phenomenon for a young kid like 17. I mean, he's been in 10 years now, 27. He's grown up on stream.
Yeah.
How many people have had the pressure of having to, like, grow up anyway, right? That's hard enough as it is, let alone to be doing it live on air, basically.
Right. It's like being a Disney kid or something.
Yeah. That's, on another, and to your point, it's not just Nick, it's also his followers. We've seen this up here. There have been a lot of young kids that have wanted to get involved in politics because of Nick, because he's inspired them. I've seen hundreds of people convert to Christianity, to Catholicism, because of Nick.
Right.
And then to see people like that pastor we played, or Jewish operatives up here that run around, and they'll find these 18-year-old kids, 19-year-old kids, and then immediately start character assassinating them, shitting on their character, ostracizing them from groups. And it's like, what do you think you're doing?
Yeah.
You're going, like, whatever radical you think they are, when you get done with them,
they are going to be unstoppable.
Way more radical than they ever were before. We're going to get to super chats, so get your last minute super chats here if you have any questions for Joel. Last question, we got a super chat a couple of episodes ago. What are your thoughts on Pastor Doug Wilson? Because he's up here in Idaho. There was a big CNN piece that was done on Moscow, Christchurch, what he's doing down there. I wasn't sure if you guys were in the same, I don't think you're in CREC or anything like that, CREC, the whatever group that he does. But what's your take on him? I mean, I've generally had good experience. When I was working for E. Michael Jones, we set up an interview with Doug Wilson. So it's like, okay, well, that's interesting, like bringing on, arch Catholic anti-Semite E. Michael Jones, and I'm behind the camera there. And then, everyone at his church that I've ever met, Gay Branch and all these other people, they've been great.
Yep,
I love them.
They have.
But we've had super chatters that say that he's, excommunicating and doxing members of his church for supposedly being anti-Semites. So I didn't know if you had a relationship with Doug, or if you knew anything more on the subject. Our audience was kind of curious your thoughts. And of course, if Doug is out there, we'd love to have him on the show.
Yeah, great question. Doug spoke at our conference last year, I believe in March or April. So it's been about a year and a half. And in the first couple early years of our podcast, he came on the show a number of times, not like a dozen, but I can't remember, 3, 4, 5 times. I've been to Moscow, my wife and I, back in 2020, actually in February, right before COVID hit, and spent time in the Wilsons' home and got to meet a lot of the Moscow, Idaho people, and there's some of the kindest people that I've ever met. There's a lot of people who are frustrated with Doug right now, who appreciate me and are mad at Doug, and so I have an answer to that. I'll give my thoughts, but first, I'd be remiss, right, if I'm going to sit here and defend the good of Nick Fuentes, and not equal weights and measures. So Doug Wilson, I believe it was actually him. Ironically, he said, "A man's greatest credentials are not plaques and diplomas on the wall, but the laughter at his family's dinner table." And I think that's true. And so say what you will about Doug Wilson, but he has 3 children who fear the Lord, and 20-something grandchildren who fear the Lord. He has a church of 1,500 people that he's pastored for 40 years. It is a healthy church. He's helped with a few other men to start, a Presbyterian denomination, the CREC, that represents a couple hundred or more churches throughout the world, predominantly in the United States. He was integral in kind of recovering the classical Christian education model, and starting the ACCS, which is a group of multiple different schools at this point. Definitely hundreds, if not over 1,000 different classical Christian schools. He started a school there in Moscow, K through 12. He started a college, New St. Andrews. The guy, say what you will, but he has been a formidable force.
Powerhouse.
For Christendom. That said, Gabe Wrench, I consider him a friend. He's been a blessing. He was actually initially on our board with Right Response Ministries. And so I'm incredibly grateful for him. I spoke at one of their conferences briefly on a panel for Christian Nationalism a couple years ago at a Fight, Laugh, Feast conference, which is a group of the guys, Gabe Wrench and some others from Moscow, put that annual conference on. And so I have a ton of respect, ton of love, ton of appreciation. But unfortunately, the whole thing blew up. And I really think it's tragic because it's kind of one of those situations where it's like, it doesn't have to be this way, but it is. And so what happened, behind the scenes, a little inside baseball, is we had a member in our church who's still a member in our church, a member in good standing, loves the Lord, great guy, personal friend. And he's German. And so he grew up, born and raised in Germany and moved over to the States a few years ago. And he and his wife and children joined our church. And his German pastor, still in Germany, pastoring a church there, was a friend of his. He was in that church for 6, 7, 8 years, something like that. So felt like, I've got a good relationship with my former pastor. We're friends. And he's kind of going down the rabbit hole. And of course, the T is silent and kind of, because he's trying, it's natural affections. He's trying to let God be true and every man a liar. So whatever's true is true, even if it's not flattering to my ancestors. But at the same time, if there's propaganda and mainline consensus with history that's false, then by golly, I want to know. And so he's a German man. So his great grandfather was a Nazi. He was a fighter pilot. Flying planes. Like, he wasn't involved in in any camp or anything like that. And the reality is that most of these guys, they were Lutherans, and they're fighting for their country. Their families, their wives and kids are starving. Churchill cut off all the supply lines, and the entire world. They're fighting on every front. Great Britain and Russia. And all that. And in America, of course, we enter the fray. We've never found a war that we didn't like. Especially if it's a war. A civil war. I mean, we've had 2 civil wars. World War II was a civil war. It was European, civil war, and then we had our own national civil war 80 years later, and so most of these guys, like his great grandfather, he's like, I think my great grandfather's a Christian. What do you think, Pastor? And I was like, well, I don't know. Was he like personal friends with Himmler? Or like was he like keeping the logs of how long it takes for frostbite to set in? As he's watching Jews freeze in the snow or something like no, he's flying a plane and fighting for his family. He's a Lutheran, and it's like, yeah, then I think he's a Christian. I think that I think you're going to see him in heaven, and I think a lot of Germans fall into that category, and we don't have to demonize everybody. And I think some of them did some things that were wrong, but I think the Bolsheviks did some things that were also wrong, and I would argue worse. And so anyway, so it started like that, and he's talking to his former pastor, and he texts him a meme. Now, I don't think it was the best idea, but he's like, he's my friend, like they had that, at least he thought they had that kind of relationship. He didn't think anything of it. And it was like a Holocaust meme with like a little girl sitting at the dinner table, and her mom, 1950s kind of style. And the little girl asks her mom, what's the Holocaust? And the mom answers and says, it's the one time that Jews had to do manual labor. And so they claim that it killed them.
I think I've seen that meme.
It's a classic. Yeah. And so anyways, and so it was already out there in the ether. But here's the thing. He didn't even post it on social media. He texted it privately to his former pastor. And he texted it not saying, I'm mocking however many Jews, whether it's 6 million or whether it's 278,000 or something in between, right? I'm kind of a in between guy, but however many it was, he's not texting this and saying, for every Jew, especially women and children who were innocent, right? It's different if they're actually Bolsheviks, right? That there are bad guys in war, and there is such a thing as just war theory and these kinds of things. But for every innocent Jew who died without a fair trial, I feel awful. He's not mocking. So the pastor interpreted it as you're mocking the suffering of innocent people.
Oh,
and he's like, no, I'm mocking a historical event that for him, he's saying, I don't believe it happened, or at least nothing close to what we're told. So he was mocking something that he's saying, I don't think this is real, but it was interpreted as you're mocking the suffering of people, and then all of a sudden, this private exchange finds its way into the next blog entry and podcast from Doug Wilson.
that's really lame. That's incredibly lame.
Really lame. And so now Doug Wilson, I want to be accurate. He did not name this individual, and he didn't name me, but he said, we have members in Reformed churches, who are, promulgating memes mocking the Holocaust. And it's like, number one, he never posted it. He texted it privately to a pastor. That pastor then gossiped to Doug Wilson and a few other individuals. And then all of a sudden, it's like in one notable Reformed guy's podcast, it's in Doug Wilson's blog. And so then after it made the entry in a subliminal kind of subtle way into like 2 or 3 different public pieces of content, blogs and podcasts, I was kind of upset. I was like,
Yeah, totally.
it's like, forget this. So
Yeah.
I just put it on blast. And so I just did a podcast and I said, hey, this is what happened. This is what they're referring to in a passive aggressive way. This is exactly what happened. The person that they're referencing is a member of my church. I love him. I don't believe that he's in sin, and deal with it. And so then it became, this really, really big thing. And then out of that, and again, taking Doug at his word. And I don't have a reason to, I'm not going to sit here and say he's a liar. I think he's telling the truth in this. I have no reason not to believe him. But it's what Doug and some other leaders within the Reformed Protestant world perceived as a neo-Nazi problem. Like Doug started describing me. He'd started using, and then at that
no
point,
deal. That's super lame.
He was at that point he was naming me, and he was calling me Revoice for Nazis, which is a play off of within the Presbyterian world. There was this, conference, this movement called Revoice. It was never that large, but some people involved. And Revoice was basically a group that was saying it's okay to be gay as long as you don't act on it. Right? So you can sit there and fantasize about, sleeping with a dude, or whatever. You can even cuddle with your boyfriend as long as you don't, as long as you don't sodomize him or what. Like,
what?
It's not good. But Doug is using that to describe me. So he's like, he started saying, Joel Webbon is a revoice for Nazis, right? So like basically, like I guess insinuating like, you can have all the intentions, you can have all the motives, you can have all the fantasies and the thoughts, just you can't act on it, which is really hypocritical because that would, number one, it's just rude. But number two, it's factually false, because the equivalent of, using that play off of Revoice, it's like, well, this guy has gay affection, right? Homosexual affection for another man, but he's not going to act on it. Well, the equivalent over here of like a Revoice for Nazis would be, I've got guys in my church who want to physically harm Jews, but they're not acting on it. But I don't have guys in my church like that. I have guys in my church who think that some Jews, or even perhaps many Jews in various time periods, have been a serious problem. But I don't have anybody in my church who's saying, I want to go and hurt Jews, but I won't act on it. That would be the equivalent. So it's slanderous. It's actually slanderous. And so all this happens, and I defend this guy, in my church, who, like, he's not a celebrity. He's kind of a little bit of a celebrity now, but he's not a celebrity. He's not, a big name, or he's just a guy in my church. And people, people were shocked by it, because they're like, you had an in with Doug Wilson, who, is kind of growing in popularity, the CNN, documentary. And like, you had an in with this guy, and these guys were at your conference, and you were this growing, young man, growing in prestige and influence in the Reformed world, and, connections with these guys. And you blew it all up over one random guy that nobody even knows his name. And
also, what he did was no big deal.
Yeah.
And my answer was, yes. And I'd do it again, because it's the right thing. And that's the thing that people, I don't think, realize. They're like, well, Joel's publicly, saying, positive things about Nick, because he just wants a claim. Well, no, I also stood up and defended the no-name German in my church that only cost me, at least at the time, because it's just the right thing to do. So whether it's a member of my church that nobody knows who he is, or whether it's Nick Fuentes on a generational run, you do the right thing. And so from that event, so this is blowing up, and people are saying, well, there's an anti-Semitism problem within the Reformed Protestant world. And then also Pete Hegseth, who is a part of a CREC church, was during, him being, grilled and everything like that to be confirmed for Secretary of Defense. And so, he was a CREC guy. And so Doug Wilson, again, giving him credit, I have no reason not to believe him. He was thinking, well, one of the things that he might be interrogated over in his hearing might be, well, he's an anti-Semite, because he goes to a CREC church, and there's this within the Reformed world, there's all these anti-Semites. And so then, if it wasn't already this big enough ordeal, they, Doug and some other guys in the Reformed world, significant players, came out with a statement, and they called it the Antioch Declaration. And the whole thing was basically saying, yes, Jews, are not Christians, and they need Christ. There's only one way, to salvation, faith in Jesus. But there are all these different false religions, and Judaism is not worse than any other false religion. And I'm sitting there and like, yeah, in the eternal ultimate sense, spiritually speaking, you reject Christ and you go to hell. Whether you reject him because you're a Muslim, or reject him because you're a Hindu, or reject him because you're a Jew, or reject him because you're an atheist, or whatever it is. But to say that all false religions are equal with no disclaimer, it implies that they're equal even in their temporal effects. And the reality is, like, think about that for a second.
Yeah.
Temporally speaking, has Mormonism had as many temporal negative effects as Judaism?
Nope.
Of course not.
Of course not. That's insane.
It's also like
That's
saying that like every sin is the same.
It's
That
the
like,
same, right.
murder is the same as,
Right.
stealing a Cisco cup from like a cafeteria or
Right,
something
exactly.
Well, exactly. And that's another common, evangelical misnomer. It's like, well, all sin is equal in the sight of God. No, it's not. All sin, if not repented of and covered by the blood of Jesus, by grace through faith in him, all sin is equal in its eternal spiritual consequences, that it will separate you from God in eternity in the conscious torments of hell. Yes, not all sin is equal, however, in its temporal earthly effects. A white lie does not affect people here and now in the way that a serial killer does. And number two, even eternally, although all unrepentant sin will send you to hell, there is a hierarchy on earth, right? Egalitarians, hardest hit, hierarchy on earth, hierarchy in heaven, and there is a hierarchy in hell. Jesus says to one will be given a light beating, but to another will be given a more severe beating. He's talking about people who perish in their sin and go to hell. So even in hell, everyone will be eternally separated from God in hell, but not everyone's torment. It'll be bad for everyone, but it will not be equally bad for everyone. God is just, and because he's just, God punishes justly. And because not all sin is equal, the punishment is not equal. And so you can apply that to sin, you can apply it to false religions, as I did. So I went on the record and I said, I believe that Talmudic Judaism is uniquely pernicious. All false religions are bad, but I believe that this one is uniquely pernicious. And so they used exact language. It was very clear. They were talking about me and others, a few others that held that similar position and saying, Judaism is not uniquely pernicious. All, false religions are bad, but to say Judaism is uniquely pernicious is anti-Semitic, And so anyway, so it became this whole ordeal. So all that, back to your question, what do I think about Doug Wilson? I think he's a Christian. I think he's been faithful. I think he's done a lot of good. And here's the thing, I'm trying, again, equal weights and equal measures. I try to be consistent. So all the way back in the beginning, I said, we can't be idealist, right? Where it's just, all or nothing. And I sometimes think that some of the guys who are, in the noticing crowd, that you and I are a part of, they notice one thing, like what happened between me and Doug, and they would say, Jew,
Yeah,
subversive, op, and so I see guys like, Rabbi Doug, or whatever, and it's like, look, I think he's wrong on this issue, and I think it matters. And yes, I do think there are reasons. I don't think it's random. Right? Doug has Jewish family members. He's 2% Ashkenazi. His wife is 13%. Her dad, I think it was her dad was 25. Her grandfather was 50 and was a Jewish rabbi, actually. So Doug's wife's grandfather. Yeah. So there's a little bit of an every single time situation going on, but
Oh no.
and he has partly Jewish grandkids and things like that. So there is some familial, natural affections, which just for the record, because again, equal weights and measures, I'm not going to demonize that.
He is also in that.
I care about my kids. He cares about his. So there is that, and then also I do think that there's a play right now. I think there's I'm just going to say it. There's a NatCon play.
I was going to say the NatCon connection with Yoram Hazony.
That's
and
right.
The Peter
There's a
Thiel
Yoram
people.
Hazony play. There's there's a Daily Wire. Andrew Klavan. He's done some stuff with it. So I think there's a strategic calculus. I think in Doug's mind, he's like, Jews are not Christians. They need Christ. But we don't win without at least some kind of partnership with them because they're so influential, especially here in America. I think that's part of it. And if I'm wrong about that, then take it with a grain of salt. I don't want to speculate too much.
Sure.
And then I know because he's using his own words, he's written about this. I think there's the familial piece of having Jewish relatives, and that one I understand. Like if I felt like the whole world was souring on the Irish. Well, my wife is, Irish, and my kids are therefore part Irish. And because I have kids and I love them, they're part Irish. If the whole world was like, every single time the Irish, then I might start getting a little nervous, So I'm sympathetic in that regard.
Got it.
But my point is, I can look at that and I can say, this was an unforced error. I think it's a significant error. I think it unnecessarily divided the body of Christ, and I think you're wrong on the issue, and it's carving out cover fire for certain individuals who are doing untold damage to our country, to our civilization, and to the church. And yet, I can say that, and I don't have to be an ideologue. I can say that and also say, and you recovered classical education, and you've built, hundreds of churches, and you've done this and you've done that, and I've learned certain things from you, and I'm grateful.
Yeah.
So that would be my position on
Got
Douglas.
it. Well, thank you very much. Sorry, we are unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but big thank you to the Rift TV for loaning out the studio for this interview today. But I do believe that there is an interview that needs to take place. And so thank you so much for joining us, Joel. You can find Joel on X at Right Response M. Right Response, the letter M like ministry. Also his website, rightresponseministries.com. Joel, thank you so much for joining us. We would love to have a chat again in the future.
Thank you, Joel. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored. Thank you.
All right. Cheers. And so we will get through some of these super chats on our own. And unfortunately, we won't have any input in them, but it's okay. All right. So let me hold on a second. I need to get a bigger TV up there.
Wow, Doug Wilson. No,
No bigger TV?
No, Doug Wilson. Like that is.
Oh, come on. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
No, absolutely not.
Well, we should try to get him on the show. It'll be good. We'll have a nice chat. Maybe we'll go down to Moscow, do a little interview with him. I mean, I think he's done a lot of good. I don't think that, I don't think that we should let this one thing.
One thing. It's
It's a
the thing.
It's a pretty big thing.
It's the one thing.
I'm trying to be very diplomatic.
I'm just not feeling very charitable towards him. That is so lame.
Yeah, charity. Big deal. Anyway, off to your super chats today. Thank you very much for everybody who did super chat. You can get your last minute ones in at thebacklash.net/super chat. Weasley264 sent $5. Love Right Response Ministry. So happy when I found the Protestant LCMS church, which does not permit women pastors. Most traditional church I found in Pennsylvania so far. However, every pastor is a soft soy boy and elders are boomer Zionists. What do? Go to the Latin Mass. Go to a Catholic church. I don't know. I don't know how to help you in Protestant land. I mean, with Catholics, it's pretty easy to find a good church. Whether or not they're saying the Latin Mass is pretty good measuring stick. And whether or not there are gay flags hanging up on the altar, that would kind of tell you whether or not you should head for the door. Bustin' Cider sent $5. Enjoy Right Response Ministries. Devin Stack has a good point. If any church has such a wide range of acceptable viewpoints on Zionism, how are they ever going to be effective as a tool to fight against it? Joel still seems afraid of racism. Also, is Antonio a white? Who's Antonio?
Devin Stack's stream this week was so good, and I felt like personally attacked because he was talking about retards on the dissident right that are saying that we should ally with Muslims to defeat Jews, and I was like, I said that.
I've said
Sometimes
that
I have to listen to Devin Stack's stream.
He reels you back in.
That reels me back in, and I was like, oh, I'm that retard. That's
Hey,
me.
it's like, hey, retard finder, found one.
I know.
Right over here. Big Mad Lad sent $5. What is Joel's opinion on the millennial reign and the seemingly unfulfilled Old Testament prophecies? Does he think that it has already happened or will happen when Christ returns? You have to take scripture pretty unliterally to think that it has happened. I am not Joel. I do know that he considers himself a post-millennial partial preterist, is what he said in his recent interview with Dr. Taylor Marshall. So I don't know if that helps with the super chat. Unfortunately,
sorry, we had a bit of a scheduling error.
Scheduling conflicts. Somebody had to get in over at RTV, so I can send him a text. How about that? I will screenshot this, and maybe on Wednesday we will talk about that more. Book Track Groove sent $10. Matthew chapter 24 and Revelation chapter 7. Solve this problem. This is your homework this week, guys. On the race issue, Joel, what shows do you recommend for women? Are active, remove, no-fault divorce?
I have shows for women.
Well, what are your shows for women?
Okay, I'm into this true crime show called Evil Lives Here, and every other episode is like a white chick that got into a terrible situation with a minority, and all of this could have been prevented if her parents were just like, don't date black guys.
Based.
Watch that show.
No-fault divorce is evil and needs to be abolished.
Agreed.
That's awful. It ruins families. It's not good. We need to get rid of it Big
Get
time.
rid of it.
Big Mad Lad. Send $5. The Bible never once mentions racism as being a sin. In fact, it doesn't ever say slavery is a sin. How have we got to the point where the church teaches this suicidal empathy where racism is the ultimate sin and we have to let in all the third world?
Jews.
The Holocaust.
Yeah, that's exactly how that happened.
Yes. Now, I
know,
mean, like the Catholic Church, Christians in general, we've opposed chattel slavery. I mean, that's out there, but
It's so retarded, though. It's like if God wanted us to miscegenate into different races, wouldn't he have made it so that there was no distinction amongst races?
yeah.
They can all be refuted so quickly.
Yes, obviously. Over on Entropy, Castler777 sent $15.03. Oddly specific. Thank you for the big super
Thanks,
chat.
I appreciate it.
There was no note attached to that. Let me just check here if there happens to be more super chats on Entropy. It does this weird thing when I start the live stream. Yeah, there is. The Shadow Band sent $10. Always great to hear from Joel. Our denominational differences should not keep us apart. I think that more and more there's consensus forming that we need to
Convergence.
find ways to work together and play nicely. And then when we win, we can argue.
We can deal with it later. Yeah.
We can argue when we win. No Mixing sent $5. Hey, white boy, stay away from Connie. Don't touch the wonton.
Oh, somebody was saying, somebody was
I don't
saying
get this.
somebody was saying to look this up in the live chat and I was unable
What's
to
up
do
with
this.
wonton?
I'll look it up in Twitter.
Okay.
I sound like
Reinhardt sent $25.
Hi, Reinhardt.
Devin is, of course, correct again on this. For all the concern trolling about purity spirals, if we fail to mention our standards, then there is no movement in the first place. We stand to gain nothing by allying with our enemies of any faction. Yeah, true. I mean, I think that, it's not just a matter of like the enemy of my enemy is my friend type of thing, but I mean, there is distinctions, and I mean, among the divisions in the right, there are better and worse. And the other thing that has kind of stuck with me, I watched a little documentary by Zoomer historian.
Oh yeah.
Recently, and
I just invited him onto the show.
Oh, great. Yeah. I mean, it struck me, he was doing this history piece about the youth, you know what I'm talking about. And the idea that he was in Germany at the time, all things to all people, and when you learn the history, there were like the Protestants, the Catholic monarchists, there were the right-wingers. I mean, Ernst Röhm, and he was gay and all these different people. And so to be able to build a coalition in a Weimar country that had been divided and those divisions sown by Jews, specifically to prevent the people from ever getting together and exerting their will in their country, I just find that fascinating, being all things to all people and finding ways to work together, because no one faction, in my opinion, is going to slay this dragon
Absolutely.
alone.
Right.
We need to work together. Anonymous sent $10. Christian identity is the solution for whites, and recognizing that the Irish, Welsh, Scottish, Anglo-Saxon, Scandinavian, and related Germanic peoples are literally the Israelites of the Bible and not the Edomite Jews who have historically been our enemies. It's interesting. There's a lot of Christian identity people up here. I mean, the Catholic Church does believe that Christians are the true Israel. And I haven't done the homework on the historical race stuff. So whatever. Anyway, thank you for the big super chat, Mr. Anonymous. Let me quickly go over and see if I can sign in over here. While we're doing that.
These friggin' flies.
I know, I am so sorry. It's
okay. I'd rather deal with the flies than be assaulted with the salt gun.
Jeepers creepers. It looks like we have been inundated with a bunch of people. 820 hitting the button. But it doesn't look like we've received any real crypto super chats, which, by the way, is one of the best ways to send money to us with a message. The crypto super chat green thing. Because I just found out YouTube takes like 30% of the. Oh, speaking of, we have super chats on YouTube. Son of a bitch. Here we go. Super chats on YouTube. Imperius sent $5. More shows just for me. Thank you for the big super chat.
Thank you.
Thunderstorm sent $9.99. The Jews worship the Canaanite goddess Shekinah at the Wailing Wall in a Kabbalah sex magic ritual.
Wow.
That is true and scary. And Our Money Jubilee sent $50. Thank you for the big super chat. The Backlash promotes libertarian commodity money as a solution to Shylock's usury, but Germany's economic miracle occurred with labor-backed fiat. Commodity money will largely be loaned with usury. Question, will you platform usury-free reform guests? Sure. I mean,
Yeah.
send us an email at info@thebacklash.net. I am unaware of anybody with the ability to get a state to back their money with like labor or GDP or output.
It'd be rough, yeah.
At this point, we've got gold, we got silver, we got Bitcoin. These are things that are at least, scarce. They're tied to real world things that can't be counterfeited. Speaking of, we have to give a big shout out to one of our sponsors, Atlas Bullion. If you are concerned about the fiat money system and where we are headed economically as a country, it's not looking very good. Atlas Bullion has a way for you to preserve your wealth into the future by stacking gold and silver in their monthly or bi-weekly or maybe even weekly. Do they do it? Monthly or bi-monthly, gold and silver subscriptions with plans starting as low as $55 and gold subscriptions starting as low as $200. You can start stacking precious metals, gold and silver, that can't be printed out of thin air, counterfeited. There's no counterparty risk. It's a way for you to put your hard-earned labor into something that the government can't just print more of. They also have options for your kiddos if you'd like them to start stacking gold and silver and learn the true power of sound money, hard money, real money. You can go to atlasbullion.com/thebacklash. And every purchase you make there does go to help keep this channel alive and bringing you content that you know and love. Romega on YouTube sent $9.99 without any message.
Thank you, sir. Or
Thank you
maybe
very
ma'am.
much.
Who knows?
Who knows? We've got to give another big shout out to Antelope Hill Publishing, America's leading publisher that is fighting to keep history alive against the regime of anti-white censorship and to publish a new generation of dissident radical. Excuse me. I'm still getting over this cold. It's been like 3 weeks. And right-wing researchers, philosophers, polemicists, and writers. They have an eclectic catalog that includes veteran right-wing authors and academics like Kerry Bolton, Dr. Ricardo Duchesne, and Paul Kersey, as well as newer figures like Lord Miles Routledge of Afghanistan, Josh Neal, and Christian Secor, in addition to a long list of original translations or modern reprints of otherwise inaccessible historical works from eras such as fascist Italy, National Socialist Germany, and even medieval Europe. Their original works include groundbreaking investigations into the causes and funding behind transgenderism and the opioid crisis, books on Christian nationalism and American folktales. Additionally, Antelope Hill contributes to the regeneration of our culture and rebirth of our family values through their top-quality fiction, including books like Let Them Look West and Worlds Separated, and a collection of beautifully illustrated and wholesome children's books. Whatever your interest is, you're bound to find books that you like at Antelope Hill, all professionally published and with cover art that will grace your bookshelves. Help us and help our people by checking out companies that share our values and work to preserve the birthright of our history. Visit Antelope Hill Publishing today. And one more ad.
There is no way to get a hold of Sam Hyde.
Sam Hyde?
It's just impossible.
Wigger?
Yeah.
Oh, I think we could get to him.
Really?
It's possible. Have you considered just like taking a road trip out to Rhode Island?
That would be weird.
Why not? Just show up.
I
like
have kids.
TV.
I can't just show up to Sam Hyde's house.
You can do whatever you want.
Maybe I can email their website.
If you're tired of skincare packed with chemicals you can't pronounce at North Idaho Tallow Company, we keep it simple with grass-fed tallow, time-tested ingredients, and zero junk. Our soaps, balms, and lip balm are packed with bioavailable nutrients your skin actually needs. No fillers, no endocrine disruptors, just rugged, reliable skincare that works. Ditch the synthetic garbage and switch to North Idaho Tallow Company. Get yours at idahotallow.com. And please sign up for the Soap of the Month subscription. It helps this show. Basically like half of the money from the Soap of the Month subscription goes to advertising here. And also you get to be clean skin, nourished skin. They also have, we are getting to the end of summer, but they also have a pretty rockin' sun balm.
Yes.
Totally not sunscreen. That would be illegal to say, but it is. And it's great. And, it worked out well. My mom was using it. Let's see. Do I have the thing? We went on a little journey this past weekend to Leavenworth,
Oh, lovely.
which is this like little German town
It's cute.
in where do you call it? Washington State. You know, it's a great place. If you ever have a chance, go visit Leavenworth. It's a lot of fun, and the sun balm helps, especially on those sunny days.
Sure does. Thank you guys for joining us today. You can find us on X at Real Backlash. You can find all of our links on the backlash.net. Join us for our normal Wednesday show, which is at 3 p.m. PST while Cameron is in whatever country he's in. This
Correct.
week. We will see you then, and we look forward to it. Bye-bye.